Good to go. Well, thank you everyone for attending this session, and everyone's probably hungry, late lunch, but we'll get through it and we'll have some fun doing it. I'm really excited to hear your guys' feedback, and when we get to the technical part, because transparently I'm not a developer. Our development team worked really hard on this, and then I was kind of the customer success lead. So when we get to the technical part, really excited to kind of engage, and we'll make it more conversational and hear your guys' thoughts. So we're going to talk about modernizing a design system. Drupal and SDC come out with Storybook. So we helped out Rutgers University with this project. It was an RFP that we won through our proposal, and we'll kind of get into kind of what they liked about that. But again, it's how Cheppers replaced Rutgers updating component library, moving from PatternLab to Storybook and Drupal SDC. Just to raise your hands, who here has played around with SDC, is using SDC currently in their ecosystems? Cool. Awesome. Yeah, and it's a relatively new approach. Excited to share about it. My name is Patrick Anderson. I'm based here in Chicago, and I kind of shared a little bit about my role in this project, kind of customer success, leading the weekly meetings. But in my free time, love just spending time with family, reading books, biking, running. I lead business development for Cheppers here in the States. So we're actually based in Europe, and then a lot of our clients across the world are nonprofits, higher education, we love working with mission-driven organizations. So Rutgers and the Core Component Library. So Rutgers is the State University of New Jersey, and they, in 2020, they launched a redesign of their main website, and that was in coordination with their research department and Rutgers, New Brunswick. So there's 3 campuses: New Brunswick, Camden, and Newark, and combined with the research department, New Brunswick, and UCM, which is who we worked with, they redesigned the website and it created the Rutgers Core Component Library. And the main objective of the Core Component Library was to make things reusable across sites throughout the university. So the main pain point was that a user could go to a varied amount of, variety amount of sites, could go to 10 different sites and get 10 different user experiences. So the Core Component Library was created to help make it a seamless experience across the university. And again, it kind of meets Rutgers brand and visual identity, standards out of the box, saves you time, money, and design/dev resources. And initially launched in 2020, there's more than 80 Rutgers sites used today. And again, this presentation kind of about, it's replacing PatternLab with Storybook plus Drupal SDC. And we'll get into the pain points of what they had with PatternLab, and then how that, how transitioning to this more modern solution has helped them with that. So, all right. So one platform, many sites. So you have the RCCL. Every Rutgers site starts from the RCCL, same brand, same accessibility baseline, same components across the whole network. Content and editorial voice is owned by each site, local taxonomies and flows, deviation only via variants. I think a core thing to mention here is that when they set out to build this, again, it was to try to unify the user experience. The only issue was that when PatternLab, when they brought the RCCL live, PatternLab, what it was based on, was already deprecated. So over since its launch in, which I think the next slide, 2016, or from 2020 on, there was only 3 components that were actually contributed to the platform. And those 3 were by UCM, so no other schools were contributing to it because it was just overly complex. And Pattern Lab with where it was at, it was kind of very hard to find like developers that had experience with it. And so actually this year coming up, because this project is finished and there's some things that the Rutgers team is doing on their side, but we are going to hopefully like 5x the amount of components that have been contributed to the platform. So, but everything starts at the RCCL. And there's some of those stats. So from 2016 on, PatternLab useful launch, then it became unmaintained, and so when around 2020 when the RCCL was created, it was already deprecated. So there's 3 components in 5 years. Again, we're looking to like 5x that this year, so just making it easier to contribute.
So you say you converted from PatternLab?
Yes.
Because it wasn't being maintained or it wasn't understandable?
It was, for Rutgers, it was very hard to, yes, maintain, but it wasn't easy to contribute to, and that was the goal of RCL, is for teams to be able to contribute to it. And that, again, that process was very complex on PatternLab.
Yeah.
So they really identified, UCM identified that there was just a need for a more modern solution.
And this works better for you than PatternLab does?
Yes, and we'll get
okay,
into
cool.
that. Yeah.
I'm curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. PatternLab, when stable, no PHP library updates in years, made new components risky and raised security concerns. 3 component additions in 5 years. Told the story. Why move now? Again, the Rutgers, UCM identified a need for a more modern solution, and they knew the Drupal community was going towards SDC. So SDC was stable in Drupal core, and Storybook had hardened with Rutgers homepage redesign on the roadmap. We rebuilt the foundation, not just repainted it. And kind of leading into that, going into this project, UCM had a really good understanding of what their challenges were, and kind of the need for a more modern solution and what that would entail. So for us, like, we really took this as like an opportunity to kind of put ourselves in their shoes and align on like, what their goals were, and just understand deeply like what those challenges were for them. So these were kind of some of the main like technical challenges they were facing just across the university. So compatibility issues with Drupal core updates were issued while they were still in PatternLab. They had manual duplication of fixes on PatternLab and Drupal. Blocked adoption of best practices due to the outdated system. It was overly taxing to create new components and introduce them to the RCCL. Updates slowed down production across 80 departmental sites. And it was difficult to guarantee accessibility and consistency. That last one is really key because from the get-go we were really focused on like how do we make this an accessible platform, and how are we its accessibility combined with scalability, and just helping UCM be more resilient as well to external forces. And here's a quote from our stakeholder, and this is kind of the context is like when they were going over the proposals and what they were thinking they wanted out of the partner that they chose. This is kind of what they were thinking is, Rutgers was attracted to SDC because, again, they knew the Drupal community was moving in this direction. Every vendor recommended Storybook, but a solution leveraging both Storybook and SDC was appealing to us. So again, yeah, in this use case, like Storybook is reading from SDC. This gets into our approach. Kind of mentioned accessibility as being one of those main goals. The key here is, and we really try to put ourselves in Rutgers' shoes and understand again what their goals were and what their main challenges were. So again, we worked closely with the UCM team. We set up weekly syncs and we had, their developer, their team had full access to our team, and we're able to collaborate in a really great way. Performance-wise, we'll get into later. There's some stats that we can go over. But yeah, it really came down to collaborating closely. We worked with the Rutgers team, and then we worked on replacing PatternLab. We built the component library on single directory components inside the Drupal theme, and then we added Storybook to documentation, and that really created accessibility audits and live previews as well. So why Storybook? Storybook, as what we know, is it's a UI interface where you can develop and kind of manipulate components in isolation. And why we picked Storybook over alternatives, we evaluated, and why it made the right surface for SDC. It's one source of truth. Designers, developers, editors, AI agents now all read it from the same component library. So you get living documentation, but again, that can be edited in isolation and introduced. What we'll get into the next couple slides too is prop, slots, and variants. Real-time previews, so that designers and developers and content editors all look at the same rendering. Interactive previews include accessibility annotations. Trusted and supported. So this was another big reason, was that the community, the Storybook community is wide and vast, and there was a lot of documentation on it. And we knew that it was a sustainable solution. And then future ready for AI, so it provides real-time previews. Real-time previews are the contact AI agents can build new pages and components from the same library people use without breaking the design system. Keeps branding aligned. This is something that is really important going forward. Rutgers Core Component Library is not AI. It's not AI enabled, but it's really it's something that is very kind of easy to integrate with AI, and we've done that internally. But it's something that we're really excited for in the future, is helping universities, nonprofits be able to leverage AI into their design systems. All right, what is SDC? So we're getting into the technical part, so bear with me here. So SDC, fairly new approach in Drupal. Again, the UCM team understood that this is the way that the community was going towards. And the main advantage of SDC is it keeps everything in one folder, as you guys probably know. And so, so that's similar to like a React framework, where everything is again all in one place. It's a familiar mental model, and then it's Drupal native, and it's loaded only when used. Can anyone kind of share like what it was, for the people on SDC, like the benefit that you've seen compared to like before SDC?
I mean, I'm a front-end developer, so I do a lot of work in Vue. So the whole component-driven development was kind of ingrained in my brain already. So it was real easy to slide into this. My setup before had been a build script that crawled a tree and compiled all my CSS and JS, and I had to manually load that into a library file. There was just too much to keep track of mentally. So to be able to slide it all into SDC and just reference it in isolation, like you said, was just a game changer.
How much time does that like save you think?
It's hard to put a number on it, but it's not so much of a time-saving thing, but it's so much easier to understand.
Yeah.
I can share this repo with somebody, and it's easy for them to pick up. instead of having to parse through and look at 8 different directories.
Anyone have any?
And would you say that you actually don't need the build script, or is that overstating it?
I generally don't need the build script. You know, sometimes I have a behavior file along with my component. If it's a simple behavior where I'm just, you know, attaching some click events or something like that, that's standalone. If I have to import a third-party package from MTM for whatever reason, then I do generate that through a build script. So I can accomplish a lot of different things. Flexible.
And I think like one thing to note is like SDC is like one of its main, I guess like superpowers per se is that it can separate component structure from the data that flows into it. So that's another thing to note as well. Anyone else like curious to learn more about SDC at this part? Hasn't used it. Brian, thank you for being there. So from PatternLab to SDC. So again, Rutgers kind of understood they needed to have a more modern solution. So this is what they landed on, given that the community was going that way. Again, it makes them less exposed to kind of factors, external pressures. It was hard to find PatternLab developers. It also, again, made it easier to use, made it easier to contribute to, and you can kind of see how it's like, is condensed into one folder, whereas on PatternLab there was kind of multiple different places where you had to find things. Again, one button spread across the PatternLab pattern, global annotations file, and a duplicate twig in the Drupal theme. Becomes one SCC folder with no drift between and what's documented with Drupal. So there's 2 required files, and that is a button component YAML file and then a twig file. A component is a folder with, again, 2 required files that exchange data through props and slots. And then you can kind of see, we'll get into variants as well here. So props think about them as like the safe. It's an adjustable settings of a component. It's button, text, color, shape, or style. So they're really, they're kind of holding things in one place. And then slots, those are designated spaces where you can place other pieces, like putting a button inside a hero space or placing a title description into defined regions. And then you have variants. Those are approved options for content editors. So again, within those options, they can pick choices of like for example, apply now or learn more. Those are your approved options that give them flexibility, but again, keep things within certain brand guidelines. And then there's 3 places SDC components can ship from. You'll see there's my profile, there's my theme, there's my module. And the key takeaway here is that updates can be made centrally and then distributed across multiple sites. So again, this is kind of where they live, and then that side is how Rutgers deploys them. So you have a new component, and then it goes into their upstream, and then it is distributed across the sites across the whole campus. So that is, the right side's kind of like the rollout and how they, the rollout is still like being built out, and we'll kind of, there's one piece of information there that at the end that for people that are looking to do this is important to learn from. All right, and then we're gonna, how a component is rendered. So developers render components onto a page from PHP or Twig. Editors pick the same components in the editing screen on Canvas or in Layout Builder. A one component library used different ways. So again, this side is the developer side. That's how they're seeing it rendered, and then that is how like a content editor will see it rendered within the UI. And from the beginning, our approach was to make the platform consistent and extendable, so that again, team members can kind of offboard, like developers can offboard page builds to the actual editors and to marketing teams, and vice versa. Marketing teams and content editors didn't need to go to developers to build pages. And I think another thing to note here is like with AI, you can now if you have AI integrated into the platform, it can help with page builds while still keeping brand identity. And this is the editor experience. So the first starting point is you're picking your component. So you pick it within the library, and then the second step is you're configuring the component. And so that's like, for example, fields. You can, label, URL, whatever you want to, however you want to configure that to, where it's going to go on the site and how it's going to look. And then it goes through the, the publishing workflow that is established. I think it's important to note here that editors are not building separate custom pages. They're building from what is already set, what is already built in the system. Does anybody have like a similar, like Brian, do you have like a similar flow like this?
Not exactly. Our editing and workflow is a little bit more less freeform.
Mm-hmm.
Paragraphs is a module that I lean heavily on, right? So everything is a predefined paragraph. So the editors can drop in different modules in their content, but we're not using like Canvas or a visual editor. So not quite to the granular level you're showing here.
Is this the layout builder canvas?
Yes, layout builder was used, Yes.
It looks better than PatternLab. I mean, it looks more, more. Is this the standard Storybook UI? I mean, colors and. Or is this something that you all configure?
Yes, this is something that we configure.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, it's noted this was layout builder to your point, but yeah, you could use Canvas, and as mentioned down here, this is Canvas ready. Same library works for AI. Well, Canvas and AI agents build pages from the same approval components. So, but yeah, specifically for the project, layout builder was used. Yeah. And here's some statistics. This is specifically related to the main site, which we'll actually get into the redesign of that as well. I mean, the main one to point out here is the CTAs. When it came to the redesign, the CTAs were lower on the page. So we essentially, what we did is we moved those up. We got rid of like an ambient video that was within the main site, and then the clicks on the CTAs that answered essentially two questions was, what can I learn at Rutgers and how much does it cost? They've seen drastically more engagement on those CTAs since moving them up the page.
So you good performance gain too.
Yeah, and pretty good performance gain as well, Just because, PatternLab became, it was very clunky system. And
It's old.
yes, it's old, and so the site, and getting getting rid of the video as well. So we moved the video, we replaced the video with static images. So they do like a weekly like photo, that kind of gives a different feel for the university. So in addition to like moving on to Pattern Lab, there also was just ways that we optimize the site as well.
What's the shorter to display indicating?
Shorter to deploy.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, again, that kind of goes in the Pattern Lab, just like changing one component doesn't trigger a full site retest. Updating one can go live without re-verifying every page when it appears. And the other note there was, visitors do more. They just engage more. They realized, UCM did a great job with understanding what their visitors were doing on the site, and they just weren't scrolling that far down. So visitors are now doing more on the site. So new Rutgers homepage, showcase of the fresh design and modern infrastructure. The redesign is both a public-facing success and internal milestone for the design system. So this was used with the design system, rebuilt with the new SDC components. It proved the system in production, which was really important. It's flexible, future ready, and it scales across departmental sites. Again, I kind of mentioned the ambient video. It was in the hero space, got rid of that, and then implemented static images on kind of like a weekly rolling basis that showcase the university. But there's the CTAs as well. See the CTAs, and they're just clear. And then when you hover over them, they become bold. They kind of jump out. All right, and a tour of the new homepage, and you can see the CTAs there as well. So again, video was replaced with static images. On a monthly basis, they're seeing like thousands more engagements on the CTAs than they were previously, because again, they were lower on the page. Key takeaways and looking ahead. 4 themes from the rebuild: where it integrates, who's adopting it, what we learned, what comes next. Transparently, I think the main thing, especially if you're working with like a partner, or you're looking at your system, having a common understanding of what a component is or what needs to be migrated is important. So when we got the RFP, it had around 90 components in it that these needed to be migrated. What was not included in that were the twig files that also had to be migrated. So in reality, it was around 200 components that needed to be migrated. So if you're going through this, have a common understanding on what is determined as a component, because 2 teams could have different understandings of that. So migration, a one upstream every site, updates roll out to 80+ Rutgers sites automatically, plugs into existing Pantheon custom upstream. One thing we're excited about is just showcasing this for other universities, helping them kind of set up similar infrastructure, similar platforms, so that they can really scale. When departments and universities want to add new sites, it's quick to scale those, quick to stand those up. Now Rutgers as a user group, we expect we're looking already at adding new components and like 5 times over the 5 years, doing that within 6 months. But other departments, other colleges can add to it as well more easily. I think again, kind of lessons learned: build the system, then trust it. But again, understand kind of the terminology, understand like what needs to be migrated, what are the integrations needed. So I guess that comes down to better questioning in the early stages. Fully understand the scope and scale before scoping the work. And then number 4, future proofing, ready for what comes next. They can now, shortly after the excess components are migrated, that was out of scope, they'll be able to go from essentially from Figma to production very, very fast.
So Figma is in this loop for the
Yes.
designers? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so Figma and Storybook used together day to day. That is kind of the optimal, that's the optimal environment, and they'll get to that shortly. Yeah. The big thing is confidence and accessibility just across the university. And then you're no longer held back by outdated tooling as well.
So Figma is where the components are actually created?
It's sort of
Or designed?
The designs are, yes.
Right, and so then you're saying that Storybook then can, through MCP or some other function, way, see those Figma designs?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure my
Is that-
our CTO can explain that even better.
Okay,
But yes,
okay,
I
but
know
I
it's
am curious
started.
about that, 'cause I use Figma daily.
Yes, yeah. If you want to learn more about that, would be happy to put you in touch with them. Yeah. And then I think if you do want, there's a case study on this project on our site, and then if you guys have more technical questions, happy to pass those along and get answers for you. We're really excited to share this.
Is that Cheppers logo a variation of the Drupal drop?
Yes, it is.
That's
Yes,
so cool.
it's like a wide rod. Yeah, it's very like modern style of the Drupal drop. Yeah, Cheppers in Hungarian. Chep means drop, so that's what.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's what it is.
So it's droppers?
Yes, essentially, yes. Yes, you got it. Yeah, the case study is on there, and happy to answer any questions, and
I'm also curious about your Figma integration. Can you at least, if you can't describe how it works from a technical standpoint, can you at least describe functionally what that workflow looks like?
So that is, that would be on the Rutgers side. So I know like our team does have that set up. I don't have much insight into it, like what they've done on the back end, but I know that is Rutgers' goal is to have that, and it is.
Okay, so
it's a fairly easy setup. Yeah.
They may or may not have
Yeah.
gotten there.
They haven't gotten
with
there
Figma
yet.
integration.
Yeah, they haven't gotten there yet.
So there isn't
but
is not a formal integration?
It hasn't been implemented yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
But we do have experience integrating it if you do want to learn more. Yeah.
And just from a governance standpoint, like they now have the ability to change all the buttons in the theme.
Yes.
I assume somebody has to accept the theme update before that starts appearing on their site, right? Like the English department is like, no, my buttons. Like
Yes, yeah.
They have to accept the theme update before everything. And is the theme the means of delivery? Like
That's
like
a good
if you're like an editor, is the theme how you're getting your design system updates basically?
Good question. That is a good
Right,
question.
because like how does it go from Figma to Storybook to the website? I mean, how does that flow?
Get your CTO on the phone here.
Yeah. I will get answers. I will get answers out to you. Yeah. But that was something that wasn't part of the scope of the
Sure.
project, and it was like we just what we processed like yes, this is very doable. Like you'll be able to do this.
Yeah, it's a pretty
but-
prominent tool in the
yeah.
community of Figma, so.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It would make sense if there would be some effort to integrate that.
Yeah.
Here's some rope. Now don't hang yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I'm curious about is single directory components. So you only load the CSS/CD, but if you're using Tailwind, it's kind of like it should be small so you can load it everywhere. I was just curious what peeps in the room think about that.
There is no tailwind for kind of compatibility with, I just found out, in trying to look at that, because currently my CSS is in Tailwind. And so if I was to try to get, move to Storybook, how would I do that with my current, stack? So, doesn't look like, what is it, web? What is Storybook use?
the Storybook side, but
I just saw the term, yeah, I have to.
You had a question as well?
Yeah, you were showing some statistics about like page loads and users not scrolling down the page. I was curious what you were using to track that.
Yeah, that's a question for Rutgers. I can definitely get you an answer on that. I'm not familiar with what they were actually using. But I can definitely reach out and ask them and let you know. We can, connect on LinkedIn after. I can definitely send it. I do have like some things top of mind on that one, but I don't want to share just in case they are wrong.
I'm curious about if you could just ask them about their testing, because you did say that one of the advantages they had was that they weren't testing the site, they were testing the individual components inside of that. And I'd be curious, like how their testing practices, and then kind of like an integration point, because like if you've got a primary CTA and you're testing that variant, and you've got a secondary CTA, cool, you can test both of those, but then
It's just for my use case, so.
how do you make sure by the time those things make it to the site that, someone's still following brand practices or whatever it is, and not putting 13 primary CTAs on a site, or that's something that is kind
Yeah,
of-
that's interesting. Yeah, I can say within the project, like, just as far as testing went, like we would test out what was built, on our end, and then we would hand it over, and they would test it on their end, and then it was certified. But within like the page build, like other departments, I'm not sure.
Yeah, kind of like the integration point, plus the fact that content authors are the most unreliable people, in the entire development flow. Like they create the most chaos. So
I'd argue developers create all that chaos. And there's 17 different variations of gray.
I think
But there's a
what's
lot of
in-
chaos in the system.
What's important there is the variance. Like there's only certain options.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But
I like to think that our content creators are creative and they solve problems and they find workarounds.
Yes,
So that's
I mean-
the designer's job. You give them a document that says, don't do this.
Oh, no.
And then it's up to them.
No, I mean, I get that, like you say, don't do this, but when they do, it's, knowing like, okay,
It's on them.
what are the validations that I have to find out that they did the thing, that they added the wrong image or whatever. If I have options by the time it's made it to the site, to make sure. And also, I was thinking about HTML semantics as well, because I get that this is like a component, but there are certain HTML semantics that are relational. So how do I account for that? How am I able to account for like, oh, well, this might be in an H group, here, but maybe it needs to be in a div over here, it's in a section element versus an article element. How can that affect the document outline and how things are being read to the end user? Because that's not something that can be accounted for in the unit test of the design system. It can only be accounted for in the final product, how a screen reader is going to interact with all those elements.
Yeah.
So you can,
What I mentioned, and those are really good questions. 'Cause I know like UCM doesn't, this is for the college and departments that are using the RCCL, and it's actually not every site in Rutgers uses the RCCL.
Okay.
But and again, not every college department is trying to answer the same questions, or they're not trying to. They all are trying to give different answers to their unique visitors. So there is no rules around. I think the what CTAs you have to use, or how many, or
Sure.
It's more just making sure that again the design components are the same, and you don't have one site that's like a different shade of red or something, that's just one example, but it's making sure that again they have those options, they know what their options are, and then but adding on to your question's really good. Yeah, we can connect on LinkedIn after. I'd
Sure.
definitely send over answers. And, yeah.
I'll send you a list.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. Any other questions?
Can I throw out a question to the room?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
that'd be great.
I know you're not the technical person.
Yeah.
so- But we're in the situation where we have the Storybook design system, and we use it for both Drupal and WordPress sites. But we created that before single directory components came along. So now what I would like to do is convert it to integrate with Drupal via single directory components. Has anyone gone through that?
Not specifically with WordPress. When I originally set up our theme, we used the components module,
Yep.
which was, just a shortcut to a twig file, and had to manually attach libraries, which is where I was talking earlier about having a build.
Mhm.
So to go from that to single directory components was easy. If your organizational structure is already set up with that mindset, you're really just adding the YML files and wiring things together. So that process was pretty easy for me.
Glad to hear that.
This is just a hypothetical, but my last job was, we were using, I forget if there was any underlying framework to it, but we were using a system that was like almost single directory components, where it was like structured with YML, and the twig files were all in directories with all their CSS and everything. And that would seem like it would be a lot. Like, you could probably write a script that would convert something like that to SDC, because it's logical. But if you don't have that,
Just ask me.
There was a contrib module that basically was pulled into Drupal core with some modifications, the single directory components. So you might well be using precursor to SDC.
I also wrote a CLI generator to kind of streamline the process for me. So there's like maybe 6 or 7 different files that might go into a component. So I run a generator, it leads me through some prompts. Give me a name, give me fields, slots. Are we using JavaScript? Does it need to go through the build system? And it creates it for me, stubs everything out. That's been.
And is that just for your components.yaml file, or is that the whole component?
That'll make the YAML file, the twig file, JS and CSS, and just kind of stub it out. My stories file, so it'll fire up in Storybook immediately. I can start work on it. I haven't added generating a test file yet, but that's next on my list. So it's all self-contained.
Awesome, it's right on time. Well, yeah, if you have any other questions, happy to connect on LinkedIn and get those answers to you. And yeah, I'll be here throughout the conference, so yeah, feel free to say hi
Thanks.
and chat. Yeah, thank you.